Alright, picking where we left off, we're in the persistent levels blueprint, which you can get to from the levels menu here. We can just go ahead and open it. So on event begin play, we're going to immediately destroy the player character because it's going to try to spawn you in it and we don't want it. You could do whatever, you could hide it, you could do something, but generally just destroying it's going to be easier. And then what we're going to do is we're going to possess that pawn that we made, which in order, a quick easy way is just select it in the viewport, go into this, right click, and then you can create a reference to it from here. We're in the level blueprint, it knows who everyone is, so you don't have to do any crazy casting and all that to get to it or get all actors of class. So we're going to you're going to need the player controller and the pawn that you want to control, and we just possess it. Dragging off of the player controller will give you the possess and unpossess options. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to find them. So then the next thing we need to do is we end up getting our game instance, and from there you will cast to your game instance that you made. You need the references currently using this game instance, so we go in and then we're going to trigger that event within there that we created earlier. We will trigger this event here, which is going to bring up our load screen widget, which is what we want. So from there, this is the part that's going to handle loading the streaming chunks. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into a branch here, and we're going to compare how many chunks have we loaded versus the length of that array of chunks that need to be loaded. And if it's greater than or equal, technically it'll never be greater, but you know, it's just safe to put it that way in case something somehow incremented this twice and it now is 7 or whatever. It's fail safe. So we do a branch there, and this is going to stay false until we load them all, basically. So we come in and we're going to load our stream level. Make sure that these are unchecked. You don't want to block. This would hitch the main thread and it would just lock everything. And you don't want it to make it visible. We're going to do that all at once at the end. So what we're going to do is, because this integer that we created starts at 0, we're going to get that position in this array, and that'll give us the name that we want to load. And then because this is a latent effect here, the big problem, you can't put this in a real loop. You can't use a for loop. You can't use a while loop. It'll throw out infinite errors and infinite loop detect errors. And it's just, we're going to have to do a little bit of trickery here. So then what we do is we increment this variable, which, I mean, you could do it this way if you absolutely want. You could say plus, you could do this, you know, whatever, right? You could do it that way, but it's easier to just say increment, boom, and it does it for you. It's a pass-through version of it. It does the same thing. Adds 1 and sets the variable. So next we want to cast to our game instance again. So get your game instance, cast to your specific unique one, and then as that game instance, we want to load our widget variable that we created right here. We want to access it, and from within that, we want to access our progress bar that we made, whatever name you gave it. So, you know, if you just pull off and you say get, get, in my case, load progress. And then from that, we cast off and we say set %, and that'll get you this ability right here. So it's a simple math here. Chunks loaded divided by total chunks gives you %. I convert them to floats because integer math sometimes screws up and it'll do all kinds of like rounding that you don't want. So then we set that percent, and then we are going to loop back into here, which you can just again create a custom event and name it whatever. I named it loop back, it doesn't matter. This here technically is an artificial delay, just for the sake of demonstration. Realistically, you're going to be loading a lot of assets and you won't need this, but just to make it visible to people that, hey, a progress bar is loading, this works. So when we loop back through, we want to check and see, are we done with the loop yet or not? And if we aren't, then we're going to come back into here and it's going to check this length again versus how many have loaded, and it's going to do its thing again. It's going to keep doing that, and until eventually this is going to equal that. They're going to be equal to each other, and when that happens, it's going to say that we're done with the loading loop, and then we loop back because you have to do that, or else this will give you an infinite loop error. So we loop back into here, and it's going to come back into this branch, and now it's going to see that this is flagged as we are done looping. So that goes true. If you don't like wires crossing, then you can just simply say not boolean, and you can flip your wires if you really want. So then we're going to get into, this is a flavor thing. You don't need to have it, but I personally wanted to camera fade and slow motion type stuff just because it looks cool. So this timeline here, I just have a couple of curves coming in that, this one lasts 2 seconds, this one does 2, and they're one of them's kind of for the camera fade, and then the other one's for a slow motion effect on some particles. The reason why this is here is because I technically just copy pasted this from a level blueprint thing that I've made for something else that will ramp the camera up from black to white. This is just going to take it from white to black. So this is just a 1 minus. That's just inverting. If this was 0.9, 1 minus 0.9 equals 0.1, and so on and so forth. It's pretty easy to understand. So I'm getting the camera manager, and I'm setting a manual fade to black. And then from there, I'm setting a custom time dilation on the particles, which I think at the lowest I go down to 25%. Just kind of adds that little snare at the end where it kind of drags. But and then what we do is we come in, we're going to unpossess the player controller. We're going to unpossess whoever we were on. You don't technically need to do this. It's just good habit, I guess. I don't know, fail safe. It's not like it's hurting anything. So this is the part here. This is why it's nice to keep this loading level with minimal actors in it possible, because you're going to have to come in, you're going to have to select it, you're going to have to come back to here, we're going to have to get a reference to it, and then we destroy it. So you're going to want to do that for all of the vestigial stuff, especially anything like atmospheric fog or lighting. It needs to go bye-bye, all of it. Do not delete the actual player spawn point. Like in this case, I'm deleting this one here, but the one that's in your actual level, do not delete that. You need that. And I'm gonna pause here because there's still some more stuff to explain after this, and the last video should hopefully only be 5 minutes long or so. See you in the next one.